leadership from that which we've experienced a lot in healthcare and other domains, right? So it's different than the DOT model of leadership, right? Where there's one person in the middle and everyone's reporting to him or her. How many of you guys have experienced the DOT model of leadership? How many of you guys have been the DOT? Yeah, it doesn't feel good, right? And what about this? How about that everyone's a leader? What happens when everyone's a leader? Nothing gets done, right? Just like what happens when everyone's a winner. No one wins. Yeah. So we're constantly striving in the movement world towards the snowflake. Now, just reflect about that for a second. Doesn't that sound nice, like the snowflake model of leadership? You guys are probably like, we hate snowflakes. Yeah. But here's the thing, folks. I actually think there is some significant relevance for this model in healthcare right now, because we have big problems, huge problems. We got a ton of work to do. Right now, a lot of that work is on the plate of people it shouldn't be, right? It's not a good use of their skill set, not a good use of their time. And we've got to get other people to step up and take on some of this work. So there's actually been some studies in healthcare looking at a few features of this type of model of leadership. And I want to showcase two features that there's actually been some data on. The first is the increasing interconnectedness of team members, right? Meaning, on your care team, you have more people who have relationships and connections with each other. So it's not just the doc who's connected with the nurse and the medical assistant who's connected with the front desk receptionist, but it's more of those folks have connections, interactions, face-to-face every day. Another word for that is increasing density of a social network. So that's one feature. The second feature is you have decentralized power. You have more people stepping up, more people in positions of agency and decision-making. Now, these folks in Wisconsin recently did a study looking at these features and their effects on patient outcome and quality of care. Now, this is a group of 6 Wisconsin practices, 3 suburban, 2 urban, 1 rural. And what the researchers were looking at was the relative interconnectedness of team members and the relative decentralization of power. And so you can imagine that within 6 practices, you're going to get a pretty wide range on those 2 parameters. So, on the top, you see a picture of a practice that has both high interconnectedness and low centralization of power. So what that means is you have a group of people who have a lot more connections to each other, a lot more interactions, and at the same time, a lot of those folks are in positions of leadership. Decision-making, right? Engagement. Whereas on the bottom, you have the exact opposite. You have low interconnectedness, and you also have high centralization of power. So the bottom actually is more typical for primary care practices around the country right now. What they found is that the more interconnected the team, the better the outcomes. Significantly better. Look at some of those. At the same time, they found the more that power was centralized to just a few people on the team, the worse the outcomes. Significantly worse. Now, obviously this is an incredibly low end. We need a lot more study. But it was interesting because the researchers reflected on, how does interconnectedness lead to better outcomes? And what they hypothesized was that it builds trust between team members and it creates better shared understanding of goals and commitment to one another. Now, interestingly enough, the researchers didn't look at the question of power centralization. But, based upon some of my experience with community organizing and just seeing some of these practices, my sense is that the more decentralized power is, the more engaged other members of the team are, the more they're actually stepping up into leadership, and the more they're just getting work done. And what is the name of the game in primary care these days? It's figuring out a way to get all of this work done, right? So let's say you wanted to go towards a more interdependent